Now that your husband is dead, pack your bags and never come back. That's what my daughter-in-law said. At the dinner table, in my own home, I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. The words hit like ice water. Sharp, unforgiving. Across the table, my son Ethan did not defend me. He just lowered his eyes. And then slowly he nodded. Follow my story until the end. And comment the city you're watching from, so I know how far this story travels. The dining room felt wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. Even though 3 of us sat there. Benjamin's chair, his chair at the head of the table, was empty. Forever empty. We had buried him. Just 1 week earlier, after 32 years of marriage. I was still wearing black. Still hearing his voice. Still expecting him to walk in. With that gentle smile. Instead, all I heard was Rami. My daughter-in-law's voice. Sharp as broken glass. Too big for you. Too much to handle. This house is ours now. Her words sliced through the silence. The mahogany table between us, once a place of family dinners, now felt like a courtroom bench. The meal on my plate went cold. Green beans steamed no more. The roast chicken, Benjamin's favorite, untouched. Just like my appetite. Ethan, my son, sat between us. 43 years old, broad shoulders from his job in construction. But tonight, he looked small, helpless, or maybe unwilling. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Not once. He just stared at his plate, as if the mashed potatoes could save him. I tried to speak. The service was beautiful, wasn't it? My voice trembled. Your father would have loved the people who came. Ethan said nothing. Rami smirked and set down her fork. With deliberate precision, like a judge about to announce a sentence. Yes, yes. That's exactly what we need to discuss, Ava. The room tilted. What could she mean? We had just buried my husband. Why speak of anything but grief? She leaned back, crossed her arms, her eyes cold, calculating. This house isn't yours anymore. Benjamin is gone. And now it belongs to Ethan. I gasped. What are you saying? This is my home. I've lived here for 3 decades. Every corner holds a memory of him. Of us. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, finally whispering, Mom, Romy's right. It's too much for you now. My heart cracked. He couldn't even look at me. My own son. Repeating her words. Rami pressed on. Memories don't pay property taxes. They don't fix leaking roofs. You're 71, Ava. It's time you moved on. Her tone cold. Final. Ethan exhaled, still staring at his plate. And then he nodded. The scrape of his knife on porcelain, that sound was louder than thunder. I felt the air leave my lungs. Was this grief or betrayal? I couldn't tell. The room spun. The clink of silverware echoed. The smell of roasted chicken turned bitter. Everything warm became hostile. Everything familiar became strange. And in that moment, I realized I was no longer family. I was a guest. Unwanted. In the very home Benjamin and I built. I stared at Ethan, at the boy I once rocked to sleep, the man I thought would protect me. Now silent. Now complicit. My hands trembled. I set down my fork, careful not to let it clatter, careful not to show them my fear. Inside, though, my heart screamed. Was this truly happening? Had my son chosen her over me? The room stretched long and narrow, like a tunnel with no light. The chandelier above flickered, its golden glow now harsh, cruel. And then Romy's voice again. 2 weeks. That should be plenty. Pack your things and go. 2 weeks. To erase 32 years. To erase Benjamin. To erase us. I sat frozen. My breath shallow. My chest tight. Somewhere deep inside a flicker stirred. Not rage. Not yet. But something. A seed. Because I knew Benjamin would never forgive me. If I let them erase me too. The night after that dinner, I didn't sleep. Not a single hour. I lay in my bed. The same bed Benjamin and I had shared for 32 years. The sheets still smelled faintly of his cologne. The pillow beside me still dented, as if he might come back. But he wouldn't. And all I had left were the echoes. And the words Romy had spit at me. Pack your bags and leave. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the house we had built. The grandfather clock ticking in the hall. The distant hum of the refrigerator. Even the soft creak of the old floorboards. All of it used to comfort me. Now it felt different. Like the house itself was holding its breath. I thought about Ethan, my son, my only child. The boy who once brought me flowers from the neighbor's yard. The boy who begged for pancakes every Saturday morning. The boy who cried into my shoulder when he didn't make the baseball team. Where was that boy? How had he become this man silent complicit willing to cast me out? By sunrise, I was still awake. I pulled on my old navy cardigan. Benjamin used to tease me, said I wore it even in July heat. But it was warm, safe. I made coffee in the kitchen. The smell filled the house. For a moment, I almost believed he'd walk in with his Sunday newspaper and kiss my cheek. Instead, the silence pressed heavy. I sat at the breakfast table, my mug trembling in my hand, and thought, what am I going to do? Romy's deadline echoed in my head. 2 weeks. 14 days to pack 32 years. 14 days to surrender my life. No! Something felt wrong. Too calculated. Too sudden. Benjamin would never have left me unprotected. Not Benjamin. Not after all the times he said, Ava, you'll always be safe in this house. I whispered it aloud. He promised me. And in that whisper, I felt the first spark of suspicion. I stood up, my knees stiff, but my resolve stronger. I walked into Benjamin's study. The room smelled of cedar and old books. The desk still held his reading glasses, a half-finished crossword puzzle, and a locked drawer. I knelt, my fingers trembling as I opened it. Inside were files, folders, and one thick envelope marked with my name. My heart pounded. I slid it open, but inside only utility bills, old bank statements. Nothing new. Nothing that explained why Romy believed the house belonged to them. Still, I knew Benjamin. He was careful. He would have planned. He would never leave me with nothing. Later that morning, I heard a car door. I peeked through the curtains. Ethan and Romy were outside, talking in hushed voices by their SUV. Romy held a clipboard. She was pointing at the house, at the roof, at the yard, like she was inspecting. Ethan stood with his hands in his pockets, looking down at his shoes. Silent. My stomach dropped. Were they already planning renovations before I even left? I stepped back from the window, shaking. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling my heart race. They weren't just pushing me out. They were erasing me. That afternoon, I called my sister Margaret. She lived 2 hours north in Sacramento. Her voice was warm, steady. Ava, you don't sound good. I'm fine, I lied. But my throat ached. I told her about the dinner, about Romy's words, about Ethan's silence. There was a pause. Then she said softly, Ben would never let that stand. Check with the bank, Ava. See what's in your name. Her words sparked something inside me. Yes, yes. The bank. Benjamin had always handled the accounts. But he once told me if anything happens, talk to Helen at First National. She'll help. Helen, the bank manager, she'd known Benjamin for years. Always greeted him by name. Always asked about Ethan. I decided right then. Tomorrow I would go. That night I sat by the fireplace. The family portrait hung above it. Taken 10 years ago. All of us smiling. Benjamin in the center. Me beside him. Ethan and Romy flanking us. I stared at Romy's smile. Wide. Perfect. But her eyes, even then, I wondered if they hid something. Now I knew. They did. Before bed, I walked through the house. My hand grazing the walls. The photos. The furniture Benjamin built by hand. This was more than a house. It was my life. My marriage. My memories. And I whispered into the dark, you won't take this from me. The chandelier above the stairs glowed dim, casting long shadows, as if Benjamin himself was nodding, telling me to fight. The next morning, I slipped on my shoes, grabbed my purse, and drove through the streets of our California town. The sun was bright, the sidewalks alive with people walking dogs, kids riding bikes, life going on. As if mine hadn't just shattered. I parked outside First National Bank, the same bank Benjamin and I had used for decades. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the glass door. The air inside smelled of polished wood and fresh paper, and I saw her. Behind the counter, Helen Patterson, the branch manager. Her kind eyes met mine and softened. Ava, she said, her voice gentle. I'm so sorry about Benjamin. My throat tightened. Thank you, Helen. I need your help. That's when I knew. Whatever Romy and Ethan were planning, the truth was waiting here. In this bank. In the records Benjamin had left behind. And I was going to find it. The air inside the bank was cool. Almost too cool. The kind of air that makes your skin prickle. Helen guided me into her office. She closed the glass door and offered me a seat. Her desk smelled faintly of lemon polish. Stacks of papers neatly aligned. Family photos in silver frames. I sat down slowly, clutching my purse like a shield. Helen leaned forward. Ava, how can I help? My voice cracked. Romy and Ethan, they told me to leave. They said this house isn't mine, that it belongs to him now. Helen's brows knit. That doesn't sound right. Let's take a look together. She tapped at her keyboard. The screen reflected in her glasses. Rows of numbers scrolling. My hands twisted in my lap. The sound of keys clicking filled the silence. Every second stretched like a mile. Finally, Helen stopped, her eyes scanning, her lips pressed thin. She looked up at me, and her voice softened. Ava, did Benjamin ever tell you about the trust? My stomach dropped. What trust? She turned the monitor slightly. And there it was. Benjamin's name. And mine. Side by side. Benjamin set up a living trust, Ava. Before his heart attack, he made sure the house and most of his savings would pass directly to you. No probate. No confusion. Just you. I blinked. The words blurred. My breath caught. Me, I whispered. It's mine. Helen nodded. Yes, yes. Legally and fully yours. For a moment, relief washed over me. Like sunlight breaking through clouds, Benjamin had protected me. Just like I knew he would. But then the question burned. Then why would Romy say otherwise? Helen hesitated. Her fingers hovered above the desk. Ava, look here. She clicked again. Another file appeared. Recent activity. Requests for copies of documents. I leaned closer and froze. The name on the request, Romy Henderson. My chest tightened. What is this? Helen exhaled slowly. She came here last week. Claimed she needed copies of certain forms. She said you asked her to help. That you were overwhelmed after the funeral. I shook my head violently. No. I never asked her to do anything. Helen's voice lowered. I suspected as much. But she had Ethan with her. He stood beside her, silent, nodding, as if to confirm her story. The room spun. Ethan, my son, standing there, backing her lie. I gripped the edge of the chair. My nails dug into the wood. The truth settled heavy in my chest. They weren't just pushing me out. They were preparing, lining up paperwork, trying to make it look like the trust was theirs to control. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Not just Romy, but Ethan, my own flesh and blood. Helen reached across the desk, her hand warm over mine. Ava, listen. Benjamin secured this for you. Romy can't change that. Not legally. Not without your signature. But she tried, I whispered. And Ethan let her. My throat burned. Tears blurred my vision. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I thought of Ethan at 10 years old. His freckles. The way he begged for one more bedtime story. The way he clung to my hand at his first day of school. How had that boy become the man who stood silent while his wife erased me? The grief of losing Benjamin was now doubled. Tripled. Because I realized I was losing Ethan too. Helen's voice broke through my thoughts. You need to protect yourself. Keep these papers safe. And Ava, don't confront them alone. Not yet. I nodded faintly. Her words distant, like echoes from another world. I slipped the folder into my purse. The weight of it heavy. Not just paper, but proof. Proof that I still belonged. That Benjamin hadn't abandoned me. Walking out of the bank, the California sun hit my face. Bright, warm, but I felt cold. On the sidewalk, people passed by, smiling, talking on phones, living normal lives. I clutched my purse tighter. Inside it, the truth, the shield Benjamin left me. And yet the ache remained. Because truth on paper didn't erase betrayal in blood. Driving home, the streets blurred. Palm trees lining the boulevard. Kids running with backpacks. A couple walking their dog. All I could see, though, was Ethan's face. His silence. His nod. That image haunted me. More than Romy's cruelty. Because silence from your own child hurts louder than any words. Back at the house, I unlocked the front door. Stepping into the quiet, the smell of cedar still in the air. I set the folder on the table and sank into the armchair. My hands shook. I pressed them together and whispered, Benjamin, I found it. You kept me safe. But even as the words left my lips, tears followed. Because safety was not the same as love. And I had lost the love of my son. I stared at the clock. the tick-tock filling the silence. 2 weeks, Romy had said. 2 weeks to vanish. But now I knew they couldn't erase me legally. So why did I still feel erased? The chandelier flickered above me, casting shadows across the walls. I looked at the portrait again, at Ethan's smile, at Romy's hand on his shoulder. And I asked myself, was he already gone? Had I lost him long before Benjamin's heart stopped? I wiped my eyes and straightened my back. The folder, still on the table, its edges sharp against the wood. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Benjamin had left me the house, the trust, the means to stand. Now it was my turn to decide if I would. The folder sat on my table, a quiet weapon, paper sharp as any blade. I stared at it all night. The bank statements, the trust papers, Benjamin's signature beside mine. Proof, undeniable proof. But proof alone doesn't silence betrayal. It demands confrontation. By morning, I had made my decision. No more whispers, no more silence. If Ethan and Romy wanted me gone, they would have to look me in the eye and hear me say, "This house is mine." The sound of tires on gravel. I peeked through the curtains. Their SUV rolled into the driveway. The doors slammed. Romy's heels clicked on the concrete. Ethan trailed behind her, head down. I straightened my shoulders, clutched the folder to my chest, and opened the door. They stepped inside. Romy looked around the living room, her gaze sharp as if measuring the space, as if already imagining it redecorated. Ethan avoided my eyes. Again, I set the folder on the coffee table, my voice steady. "Sit, both of you." Romy arched a brow. "Excuse me." "Sit," I repeated, stronger this time. They obeyed, if only out of curiosity. For a moment, the house was still. Only the tick of the clock. Only my heartbeat in my ears. Then I opened the folder, laid the documents flat, turned them toward Ethan. "This," I said, "is Benjamin's trust. The house, the accounts, all in my name. Not yours, not hers. Mine." Romy's face went pale, a flash of something in her eyes. Fear, then anger. She leaned forward, snatched at the papers, but I placed my hand on them. Firm, unmoving. "Don't," I warned. "My husband made sure you can't erase me." Ethan finally looked up. His eyes darted between me and Romy. Confusion, guilt, and something else, shame. "Mom," he whispered. But Romy cut him off. "Those papers mean nothing, you're old, Ava. You don't understand the costs. The taxes, the upkeep. You can't handle it." Her words stung, but I did not flinch. "I've handled more in 71 years than you ever will," I said. "Don't mistake my age for weakness." Romy's lips curled. She turned to Ethan. "Well, say something. Tell her we're right." The room froze. My breath caught. This was the moment. Would he stand by me or her? Ethan swallowed hard. His hands clenched. Then slowly he spoke. "Mom, you should think about what's best for you. A smaller place. Less to worry about." His words broke me. Not sharp. Not cruel. But worse. Hollow. Empty of loyalty. The boy I raised gone. Silence pressed heavy. I steadied myself, my voice low. "I see. You've made your choice." I gathered the folder, held it close, 2 weeks you said no. I'll give you 2 words instead. Get out. Romy shot to her feet. Her chair scraped the hardwood. Her face red. You can't talk to us like that. This house, we need it. We deserve it. Her voice cracked on the last word. Deserve. I stood too, my back straight, my heart pounding. You deserve nothing, I said. Not one brick. Not one board. Not one memory built in these walls. For the first time, Romy faltered. Her lips parted, but no words came. Ethan stared at the floor, silent, ashamed, yet still hers. Not mine. The pain was unbearable. But the truth was clear. I walked to the front door, opened it wide. The California sun poured in, bright, unforgiving. Leave, I said, my voice steady. Before I call the police. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Romy huffed, grabbed Ethan's arm, dragged him outside. Their SUV roared to life. Gravel sprayed, and then silence. I closed the door, locked it, and pressed my forehead against the wood. My hands shook, my chest heaved. I had won this round. But the war was far from over, because Romy wasn't done. And Ethan, he was still hers. I turned back to the living room, the folder still in my hand, Benjamin's signature glinting in the light. A whisper escaped my lips. You gave me strength, Ben. Now I'll use it. The chandelier above flickered. Shadows danced on the walls. And for the first time since the funeral, I felt something new. Not just grief. Not just pain. But resolve. The next 10 days blurred into one long nightmare. After that confrontation, I thought they'd leave me alone. But I was wrong. Very wrong. The house felt different. Not warm anymore. Not safe. It felt watched. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. Every car slowing on the street sent my heart racing. I kept the curtains drawn, kept the doors locked. But unease seeped in through the cracks. Twice I saw their SUV, parked across the street. Engine running, windows tinted. Romy in the driver's seat. Ethan beside her, staring at the house. Not visiting, not calling, just watching. And when I stepped outside to water Benjamin's rose bushes to collect the mail the SUV would drive off. Fast, like a shadow retreating. It wasn't just intimidation. It was a message. We're still here. We're not done. Inside, I busied myself, folding laundry that didn't need folding, polishing furniture already shining. Anything to quiet my thoughts. But at night, lying in bed, the silence grew heavy. And the question returned, what are they planning next? The answer came sooner than I expected. 3 days after the confrontation, I heard voices. From the driveway. I peeked through the blinds. Romy stood with a stranger. A tall man in a polo shirt, holding a clipboard. They were pointing at my roof, at my yard, at the windows. My chest tightened. A contractor. She had brought a contractor. I threw open the front door. My voice louder than I thought possible. What are you doing here? Romy smiled. That polished fake smile. Just getting some estimates, Ava. This place needs work. I gripped the door frame. This is my home. You don't get to order anything here. The contractor shifted awkwardly, looked at me, then at Romy. Finally muttered, maybe I'll come back another time. He hurried to his truck, drove off, leaving me and Romy in the California sun. Face to face, Her smile vanished. Her eyes narrowed. You think you've won, you haven't? Ethan and I, we're not giving up. Her voice dropped. Low. Cold. You've got maybe a few days left, Ava. Then you'll wish you had left quietly. She turned, got in the SUV, and sped away. My knees weakened. I gripped the doorframe harder. Her words echoed. You'll wish you had left quietly. A threat, plain and clear. That night I couldn't eat. The chicken pot pie I'd baked sat untouched. I paced the living room, hands trembling, thoughts racing. Was she bluffing or planning something worse? I thought of Benjamin, how he used to hold my hand, how he'd whisper, "Don't let anyone push you around, Ava." I closed my eyes, imagined his voice, and I whispered back, "I'm trying, Ben. I'm trying." The next morning, I found papers stuffed in my mailbox. Not bills, not letters, but flyers, real estate flyers, each one circled in red ink. Notes scribbled in Romy's handwriting. Perfect size for Ava. Senior living community, affordable 2-bed, 1-bath, great for downsizing. My hands shook as I flipped through them. 20 flyers. All homes. All smaller. All pushing me out. It wasn't just intimidation now. It was harassment. I gathered the papers, dumped them in the trash. But the sting remained. Everywhere I turned, they were there. Watching. Pushing. Waiting. And Ethan, not once did he call. Not once did he knock. Not once did he ask Mom, "Are you okay?" His silence cut deeper than all of Romy's threats. By the 10th day, I was exhausted. I hadn't slept properly. Every sound jolted me awake. Every shadow felt dangerous. But then a memory returned. Helen's words at the bank. Don't confront them alone. Not yet. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to gather allies. To prepare. Because I knew Romy wasn't done. And Ethan was still standing by her side. That evening, I lit a candle by Benjamin's photo. The flame flickered. Soft. Warm. I whispered, they want to erase me. But I won't let them. Not now. Not ever. The shadows danced on the walls. And in that moment, I felt less alone. Because even if Benjamin was gone, his strength lived on in me. And I would need every ounce of it for what was coming next. The morning after the flyers, I woke with a new resolve. Fear still lingered, but beneath it, a spark. No more hiding. No more pacing the halls. It was time to act. I brewed coffee. The rich aroma filled the kitchen. Benjamin's favorite roast. For years, he ground the beans himself. Said fresh coffee was the secret to starting strong. As I poured into my mug, I whispered, "Start strong, Ava. You have to." The folders sat on the dining table. Benjamin's trust papers. The legal proof. The shield he left me. But proof on paper wasn't enough. Not when Romy was bold enough to drag contractors to my driveway. Not when Ethan stayed silent. I needed more. Receipts. Copies. Anything that tied their hands. I called Helen at the bank. Her voice came calm, steady. "Ava, I was hoping you'd reach out. There's something you should see." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" She paused. "Better if you come in." By 10 o'clock, I was driving downtown. Past the palm trees lining the boulevard, past the coffee shop Benjamin and I once loved, past the high school Ethan graduated from. Memories clung to every corner, but now each one felt shadowed by betrayal. At the bank, Helen ushered me into her office. closed the door. She laid out a folder. Inside, copies of request forms. Signed not by me, but by Romy. My breath caught. She forged this. Helen nodded carefully. She signed your name, Ava. Tried to request a transfer of funds. But the system flagged it. Because the signature didn't match exactly. I stared at the papers. My name, but not my hand. A twisted imitation. Benjamin's voice echoed in my mind. Always protect your name, Ava. It's who you are. And now they tried to steal even that. I clenched my fists. They won't get away with this. Helen leaned forward. You need to be careful. I'll keep copies here. And you take these with you? If this escalates, you'll need them. I nodded, my hands trembling as I slid the papers into my purse. Driving home, I replayed it all. Romy's threats, the flyers, the forged signature. This wasn't desperation. It was strategy. Step by step, she was trying to erase me. But now I had proof, evidence of her lies. And for the first time since Benjamin's funeral, I felt not just grief, not just fear, but power. Back at the house, I spread the papers across the table. The trust documents, the bank records, the forged requests. One by one, they painted the truth. Romy was willing to lie, forge, harass, anything to push me out. And Ethan, he let her. I walked through the house slowly, room by room, touching the walls, the furniture Benjamin built, the photos lining the shelves. Each one whispered, "This is worth fighting for." And I answered back, "I will." That evening, the phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but the caller ID read Ethan. My heart squeezed. For a moment, I hoped. Maybe he was calling to apologize, to explain. I lifted the receiver. "Hello?" His voice came flat. "Mom, Romy and I will be coming by tomorrow. To talk." I swallowed hard. Talk about what? A pause. Then his words. Sharp. Cold. About the house. Click. The line went dead. I stood frozen, the phone heavy in my hand. They were coming. Again. Not to reconcile. Not to mourn Benjamin. But to fight. I set the receiver down slowly, my pulse racing, my chest tight. Then I looked at the folder on the table. The papers inside. Benjamin's gift. Benjamin's shield. And I whispered, "Let them come." The next afternoon, I heard their SUV. Tires crunching on the driveway. Doors slamming. Footsteps on the porch. The clock on the mantel ticked louder than ever. My heart matched its rhythm. This was it. The moment Benjamin had prepared me for. I stood in the living room, folder in hand, curtains drawn, the house silent except for the creak of old wood. The doorbell rang. Sharp. Insistent. I opened the door. Romy swept in first. Perfume heavy. Smile sharper than glass. Ethan followed. Head lowered. Hands stuffed in his pockets. We sat across from each other. Them on the sofa. Me in Benjamin's armchair. Like a trial. And I was the defendant. Romy wasted no time. "You can't keep this up, Ava. This house is too much for you." Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes cold steel. I opened the folder, laid the papers on the coffee table. "This house," I said, "is mine. By Benjamin's trust. By law. By his love." Romy's smile cracked. For a second, her jaw tightened. But then she laughed. a high, brittle sound. Paper doesn't change reality. You're old. You're alone. This place will eat you alive. I met her gaze, unflinching. I've lived here 32 years. Raised Ethan here. Buried my husband here. And I will not be erased. Ethan shifted uneasily. His foot tapped the floor. His eyes flicked to the papers, then to Romy. I caught it. That flicker of doubt. But he stayed silent. Romy leaned closer. Her voice dropped. We're giving you an option. Sell the house. Take a small place near a senior community. Everyone wins. I felt my hands tighten on the folder. Everyone, I asked. Or just you? The air grew heavy. The chandelier above us flickered. Shadows stretched across the walls. Romy pressed harder. Think about it, Ava. The upkeep alone is thousands a year. The taxes, you can't handle it. Why torture yourself? Her words hissed like poison. But beneath them, I heard the truth. This wasn't about my comfort. It was about control. I turned to Ethan. Finally, son, look at me. He lifted his head slowly. His eyes met mine. Brown eyes I had once kissed goodnight. Now clouded. Distant. Do you really want your mother out of her own home? Silence. The longest silence of my life. Then Ethan whispered, It's for the best, Mom. You'll see. My chest caved. The boy I raised was gone. Replaced by a man who chose her. I stood. Slow. Deliberate. I see now, I said. You've already made your choice. Romy smirked. Finally, you understand. But I wasn't finished. I placed my hand on the papers, raised my chin. No, Romy. I understand you. Every lie, every forged signature, every flyer in my mailbox. Her eyes widened. A flicker of panic. Quickly hidden. Ethan frowned. What is she talking about? I turned to him. She forged my name, Ethan. At the bank. Tried to steal what your father left me. His face drained of color. What? Romy jumped in. She's lying. She's confused. She doesn't know what she's saying. But her voice trembled. Just enough. Ethan looked between us, doubt now rising. I leaned forward, my voice steady. Benjamin trusted me. He trusted Helen at the bank. And she showed me everything. Copies of your wife's lies. Your silence beside her. The room crackled, like a storm building. Romy's mask slipped. Her lips curled. Her voice venom. You think you can win. You're weak, Ava. Old. Alone. We'll take this house one way or another. For a moment the room fell silent. Ethan stared at her, then at me. I saw it. That war inside him. The boy who once clung to me. And the man now shackled to her. Which would he choose? Which would survive? I gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder, clutched it tight. Then I pointed to the door. Get out. Romy scoffed. You don't scare me. No, I said softly. But the law does. And I have it on my side. For the first time, Romy hesitated. Her bravado cracked. Just for a second. Ethan stood slowly. His shoulders slumped. He walked toward the door, not meeting my eyes. Romy followed, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. At the doorway, she turned back, her voice low. You'll regret this. The door slammed. The SUV roared. and silence returned. I sank into Benjamin's chair, exhausted, but resolute. They had threatened. They had lied. But I had stood. And I would keep standing. Because this wasn't just a house. It was my life. My love. My legacy. And I would not let them steal it. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. After Romy's threat, I sat in Benjamin's chair, hands clutching the folder, heart pounding. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. Determination. I knew Romy. She wouldn't stop. Her pride wouldn't let her. And Ethan, he was too tangled in her web to save me. If I wanted to survive this, I had to know everything. Every detail. Every lie. The next morning, I pulled out Benjamin's old lockbox. It sat tucked away in the back of the closet. Dusty. Heavy. A vault of memories. Inside were photographs. Insurance papers. Receipts from decades ago. And tucked beneath them, a small black notebook. My breath caught. It was Benjamin's handwriting. Neat. Precise. I opened to the first page. Notes on bills. Reminders about repairs. Even grocery lists. But as I flipped further, my heart raced. There were entries about Romy. March 14, Romy asked about refinancing the house. Odd. I told her no. May 22, Ethan quiet. Romy pushing for details on accounts. Must be careful. June 7, suspicious call from realtor. Said Romy inquired about square footage. I pressed my hand to my mouth. Benjamin had known. He'd seen her greed. He'd written it down. This wasn't new. This wasn't sudden. She had been circling for months, maybe years. The pages blurred. Tears filled my eyes. Benjamin had tried to shield me, even from beyond the grave. But now his notebook was my weapon. I traced his handwriting, felt the ink beneath my fingertips, and whispered, "You knew Ben. And now I know too." That afternoon, I returned to the bank. Notebook in hand, folder in my purse. Helen looked up as I entered her office. "Ava, you look pale. What happened?" I laid the notebook on her desk. She flipped through, her eyes widening. "This changes everything," she said. "These are detailed records. If Romy tries to challenge the trust, this will prove her intent." My voice shook. "She's been planning this all along." Helen nodded grimly. "And Ethan, whether by silence or choice, he let her." The words cut deep, but I couldn't deny them. My son wasn't protecting me. He was protecting her. And yet part of me still hoped, still longed for the boy who once held my hand. But the man he'd become was breaking my heart. That night, I copied every page, scanned them at the library, stored them on a flash drive. I wasn't tech savvy, but I knew enough. I couldn't risk these records disappearing. Romy was bold. If she could forge my name, she could destroy evidence too. Not this time. Not these pages. By the end of the week, the pressure grew heavier. I noticed envelopes in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, typed letters. "Move out before it's too late. You don't belong here anymore. Save yourself the trouble." Each letter unsigned. Each one chilling. My hands trembled as I shoved them back into the envelope. She wasn't even hiding anymore. This was war. I called Margaret, my sister in Sacramento. Told her everything. Her voice cracked. "Ava, you need a lawyer. Now. This isn't just family drama. It's legal. It's dangerous. I sighed. I know. But part of me still hopes Ethan will come back to me. There was silence. Then Margaret whispered, "You can't wait for him to save you. You have to save yourself." Her words sank deep, heavy. True? That night, I sat by Benjamin's photo again. The candlelight flickered, casting long shadows. I whispered, "They want me gone. But I won't run. Not this time. Not ever." The house seemed to answer. The wood creaked. The chandelier swayed, as if Benjamin himself was nodding. I gathered the notebook, the papers, the flash drive, stacked them neatly. Evidence. Proof. My shield. My sword. Romy thought she could break me. But she underestimated one thing. I was Benjamin's wife. I had lived through loss, through grief, through decades of struggle. And I was still here. The notebook burned in my hands. Benjamin's words. His warnings. His quiet suspicions about Romy. Every page confirmed it. She had been circling for years. Like a hawk. Waiting for him to fall. Waiting for me to weaken. And now she had moved in for the kill. The letters in my mailbox. The forged signatures. The contractors in my driveway. They were all pieces of something bigger. But I hadn't seen the full picture. Not yet. That changed one Thursday afternoon. I was walking back from the grocery store. 2 bags heavy with milk bread and fruit. The California sun high. The pavement hot under my shoes. As I reached my driveway, I noticed a paper on my door. Taped to the glass. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a letter this time. It was official. Stamped. Sealed. A notice. Intent to sell Henderson property. The words blurred. I clutched the paper with shaking hands. Someone had filed documents, trying to list my house, without my consent. I staggered inside. Dropped the groceries. Eggs cracked across the floor. Milk spilled. But I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. They were trying to sell my home. As if I was already gone, I called the number on the notice. A realtor answered. Her voice brisk, professional. "Yes, Mrs. Henderson. Your daughter-in-law set up a meeting last week. She said you'd be relocating soon." My throat tightened. I never authorized this. This is fraud. The realtor hesitated. "Well, she had your son with her." He said it was all correct. My knees weakened. I gripped the counter for support. Ethan. Again. Silent. Complicit. That evening, I spread everything across the table. The trust papers. The forged requests. The notebook. And now, the notice of sale. Piece by piece, it formed a picture. Romy wasn't just trying to intimidate me. She was trying to erase me legally. Permanently. And Ethan, the boy I had carried, fed, sacrificed for, was letting her. I poured myself a glass of water. But my hand shook so hard it sloshed over the rim. I thought of Benjamin. How he used to steady my hand. How he'd whisper, "Breathe, Ava. One step at a time." So I breathed. Deep. Slow. And then I picked up the phone. I called Margaret. Told her about the notice. Her voice rose with fury. "This has gone too far. You need a lawyer, Ava. Tomorrow. No more waiting." Tears welled in my eyes. I know. I just kept hoping that Ethan would stop her. That he'd come back to me. Margaret's silence cut deep. Then she whispered, "Sometimes Ava, the son we remember, isn't the man standing in front of us." My chest ached. Her words true. Painful. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room, the chandelier above casting shadows. The notebook open in my lap, Benjamin's words stared back at me. Must be careful. Romy pushes for details. He had known. And now I knew too. This wasn't just greed. It was betrayal. Layered. Calculated. Cruel. By dawn, I had made my choice. I would call a lawyer. I would fight. Not just for the house, but for Benjamin's memory. For every year we built here. For every moment etched in these walls. Romy thought I was weak. That I would bend. That grief had made me blind. But she was wrong. I was tired. I was hurting. But I was not broken. At 10 a.m., I sat in a law office. Downtown. The receptionist kind. The air smelling of coffee and ink. Across the desk, a man in his 50s. Gray at the temples. Sharp eyes. Firm voice. Mrs. Henderson, I've reviewed your documents. The trust. The bank papers. The forged requests. And this notice of sale. He leaned forward. Your daughter-in-law has committed fraud. Plain and simple. This can be stopped. But we'll need to act quickly. My heart pounded. Can I win? He met my eyes. Yes, yes. But it won't be easy. They'll fight. Especially if your son sides with her. I nodded. My throat tight. I'm ready. Walking out of that office, I felt different. Not lighter. Not free. But stronger. I had allies now. I had proof. And I had resolve. Romy had underestimated me. She thought an old widow would crumble. But I had steel left in me. Steel Benjamin had helped forge. That evening, I lit the candle by Benjamin's photo again. The flame flickered. Warm. Steady. I'm fighting Ben, I whispered. For you. For us. For everything we built. The house seemed to hum with silence. But it wasn't empty anymore. It was alive. With memory. With strength. The lawyer's words echoed in my head all night. Fraud. Forgery. Illegal sale. Romy had crossed every line. And Ethan, he walked with her. I sat at the dining table. The trust papers spread before me. Benjamin's signature clear. Strong. Final. It felt like he was still beside me, telling me to stand. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again. Mr. Davis. Firm handshake. Sharp eyes. He slid a folder across the desk. These are your filings, Mrs. Henderson. We'll submit them to the county clerk today. Once filed, no one can sell this property without your signature. Relief rushed through me. But it was then. Temporary. Because Romy wouldn't stop. I knew her. She would fight. She would lie. She would drag Ethan with her. 2 days later, the storm hit. A knock at my door. Loud. Demanding. I opened it. And there they were. Romy. Ethan. And a man in a suit. Romy's smile was razor sharp. This is Mr. Collins, our attorney. She brushed past me. Ethan followed. Collins adjusted his tie. Cold eyes scanning the house. We sat in the living room again. Me in Benjamin's chair. Them on the sofa. Like actors repeating the same cruel play. Collins spoke first. Mrs. Henderson, my clients inform me you're refusing to vacate the property. I stiffened. This is my home. I'm not leaving. Romy smirked. Not for long. I laid my folder on the table, opened it slow, precise. Trust documents, bank records, forged requests, Benjamin's notebook. All of it. This, I said, proves the house is mine. By law. By trust. By Benjamin's hand. Colin scanned the papers. His lips pressed thin. Romy shifted. Ethan looked down. Finally, Colin spoke. These documents are inconvenient. But court battles can be long, expensive, draining. His gaze pierced me. Are you sure you want that at your age? The words cut deep, but I didn't flinch. Yes, I said. I'll fight. For as long as it takes. Romy slammed her hand on the table. Why are you being so stubborn? You can't live here forever. You'll get sick, you'll fall. You'll be a burden. Her words dripped venom, but I met her glare. I raised a son. I buried a husband. I built a life. I am not a burden, and I will not be erased. Ethan shifted, his face pale, his eyes darting. For a flicker, I saw doubt. But then Romy touched his arm. And just like that, his gaze hardened again. He was hers. Collins gathered the papers. Then we'll see you in court. He stood. Romy followed. Ethan trailed behind. At the door, Romy turned. Her voice low. Her eyes dark. You won't survive this, Ava. Then they were gone. The silence left behind was heavier than ever. I sank into Benjamin's chair. My hands shook, my chest tight. But inside me, something steadier grew. Not just grief, not just anger, but resolve. That evening, I called Margaret, told her everything. Her voice firm. Ava, listen to me. You're stronger than you know. And you're not alone. We'll be there. Every step. Tears welled. For the first time in weeks, I felt less isolated, less small. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Meetings with Mr. Davis, stacks of documents, copies of every letter, every forged form, every threat. We built the case, piece by piece. A fortress of truth, and with every page I felt Benjamin beside me, steady, unyielding. One night, as I reviewed the files, I paused at a photo. Benjamin in the garden, Ethan as a boy at his side, both smiling, both unaware of the storm decades away. I pressed the photo to my chest and whispered, I'll protect this. For both of us. The courthouse smelled of wood polish and cold air. My heels echoed on the marble floor. Each step heavy, each step closer to the truth. Margaret walked beside me, her hand on my arm, steadying me, rooting me. Breathe, Ava, she whispered. You can do this. Inside the courtroom, I saw them. Romy, Ethan, and their lawyer Collins. Romy wore a sharp suit, her hair perfectly set, but her eyes narrow, calculated. Ethan sat stiff, his tie crooked, his gaze fixed on the table. He couldn't look at me. I took my seat beside Mr. Davis, my lawyer, calm, composed, pages of documents stacked neatly before him. The judge entered. The gavel struck. And silence fell. This is the case of Henderson v. Henderson, the clerk read aloud. My chest tightened. My own name turned into a weapon. Collins spoke first. Your Honor, this property is too much for Mrs. Henderson. My clients only seek to act responsibly, to secure a safe future for her. Romy nodded along, eyes flicking toward the judge, pretending to be concerned, pretending to care. My fists clenched. Her performance was poison. Mr. Davis rose. Your Honor, my client is not frail. She is not incapable. She is the rightful owner of the Henderson home. This trust document signed by her late husband, Benjamin Henderson, proves it beyond doubt. He laid the papers on the judge's bench. The signature bold, clear, undeniable. Collins leaned forward. But intentions can shift. Perhaps Benjamin intended for the house to transition to his son Ethan. Perhaps Ava misunderstood. The judge's eyes narrowed. Do you have proof? Collins hesitated, shuffled his papers, but offered nothing. Mr. Davis pressed on. We do, Your Honor. Proof of deception. Forgery. He handed over the bank records. The forged request forms. Romy's handwriting. Her false signature. The courtroom buzzed. The judge examined the pages. Her brows furrowed. This is serious, she said. Forgery carries criminal penalties. Romy's face paled. She shifted in her chair. Ethan stared at her, eyes wide, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. Then Mr. Davis laid down Benjamin's black notebook. Your Honor, Benjamin Henderson himself documented his suspicions. Page after page, he recorded Romy's persistence, her questions, her attempts to pry into finances. The judge read silently. The room frozen. I held my breath. Each second stretched long. Finally, the judge looked up. Mrs. Henderson, your husband was a cautious man. Tears welled in my eyes. Yes, Your Honor, he was. And he tried to protect me. Romy burst out. This is ridiculous. She's twisting everything Benjamin wanted us to have the house. The judge's gavel struck. Order. Silence returned. But Romy's mask had slipped. Her desperation bared. Ethan finally spoke, his voice small. Mom, is this true about the forgery? I turned, met his eyes. The boy I raised. The man who betrayed me. Yes, Ethan. It's true. She forged my name. She lied to you. And you let her. His shoulders sagged. His face crumbled. For a moment, I saw regret. But regret was too late. The judge leaned forward. Her voice firm. The trust is valid. The home belongs to Ava Henderson. Romy Henderson, your actions are fraudulent. This court recognizes your intent to deceive, and it will not stand. The gavel struck. The sound thundered through me. Justice. At last. Romy gasped. Shoved back her chair. You can't do this. You can't just erase me. But her words rang hollow, because she had tried to erase me first. Ethan sat frozen, silent, defeated. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. I gathered my papers, rose slowly, my legs weak, but my spirit stronger than ever. I walked past them, past Romy's glare, past Ethan's silence. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Because the past was theirs, but the future was mine. Outside the courthouse, the California sun blazed bright, warm on my face, alive. Margaret hugged me tight. You did it, Ava. You stood your ground. Tears slid down my cheeks, not of grief, but of release. For the first time since Benjamin's death, I felt him beside me. Proud, steady, free. The courthouse battle was over. The papers filed. The gavel struck. The judgment final. The house was mine. Safe, secure. But victory didn't feel like I imagined. Back home, I walked through each room. The light different now, brighter, softer. The weight of fear was gone. The weight of grief still remained. Benjamin's chair by the fireplace, his boots still in the corner, the garden he tended with care, all of it alive with memory. This house was more than wood and stone. It was love. It was promise. It was us. Yet silence lingered. Not the silence of threat, but the silence of absence. Ethan hadn't called. Not after court. Not after the ruling. Not even once. My son. My only child. Gone. Not buried in the earth, but buried in betrayal. I sat on the porch that evening. The California sunset spilling across the sky. Orange. Gold. Pink fading into blue. Neighbors waved as they walked their dogs. Children laughed on bikes. Life moved forward. Simple. Steady. And for the first time, I let myself breathe. Margaret called, her voice warm. You did it, Ava. You stood up, and you kept what mattered. Tears filled my eyes. Yes, Cess, but I lost Ethan. She was quiet. Then softly, you didn't lose him today. You lost him the day he chose silence. The truth stung, but it was real. That night, I lit the candle by Benjamin's photo. The flame danced. Steady. Strong. I whispered, I kept it, Ben. I kept our home, but the cost was our son. The room answered only with silence. But in that silence, I felt peace. Because I had chosen dignity. I had chosen truth. And Benjamin would have wanted that. The days turned into weeks. I rebuilt routines. Coffee at sunrise. Watering the roses. Volunteering at the church food pantry. Neighbors stopped by, inviting me for Sunday barbecues. Little kindnesses that reminded me I wasn't alone. Community. That was what kept me standing. Not blood, but choice. One Sunday, a neighbor's daughter asked me, Miss Ava, why do you live alone in such a big house? I smiled softly. Because every corner of this house reminds me of love. And love is something you never throw away. Her eyes lit. She nodded, as if she understood. And maybe she did. Life went on. Not perfect. Not painless. But mine. The roses bloomed again. The kitchen smelled of fresh bread. The living room filled with light. And slowly I felt whole again. What did I learn? That betrayal hurts deepest when it comes from within your own family. That silence from a child can be louder than a stranger's cruelty. But also, that strength doesn't fade with age. That love can outlast greed. And that dignity is worth more than any inheritance. So if you're listening to me now, remember this. Family isn't just who shares your blood. It's who stands with you when the world turns cold. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is draw a line and say you will not erase me. Friends, if my story touched you, please subscribe. Because there are countless voices like mine, women who stood, who fought, who refused to be erased. And I will keep telling their stories. For Benjamin, for myself, for anyone who ever chose dignity over betrayal. Subscribe now. Stay with me. And never forget, you are stronger than they think.